I spent the rest of my teenage years and my college years and early uni telling people that they were wrong. That God doesn't exist, there's nothing out there.
Hold up there, Tim, my man. Let me explain our conversation to the fine people watching before we really get into this. So, hey everyone. This fella here's named Tim, like I said, and he was just telling me about his early experiences after his conversion to Islam. Apparently his parents were super upset and all that. Oh, and then he told me about how he first became an atheist in school. He was formerly a Christian. But now that he's actually getting started with the story about how he actually came to Islam, I figured you folks might find that interesting. Exposure to different perspectives and all that, right? So let's listen. Go ahead, Timmy.
So then I spent the rest of my teenage years and my college years and early uni telling people that they were wrong. That God doesn't exist, there's nothing out there. There's no such thing as right or wrong. You do what you want.
Hey now, just 1 second there. I hate to stop you so soon, Tim, but what do you mean by that exactly? It's kind of an odd thing for an atheist to say, isn't it? I mean, sure, a lot of us don't believe there's some sort of moral requirement sewn into the physics of the universe itself, although there are actually plenty who do believe in some kind of karma or whatever. Spiritual but not theistic types. But an outright denial that right and wrong exist is fundamentally no different from an outright denial that words exist. There are no words defined by the very nature of the universe itself, but humans came up with them, and groups of humans have agreed to use different words, and individuals have different interpretations of those words. And similarly, there are no moral standards defined by the universe, but humans came up with them, and groups of humans have agreed to use different moral standards, and individuals have different interpretations of them. And the fact is, pal, that when you were an atheist, you used words, and I'd bet dollars to dimes that you used moral standards, too. It's pretty goddamn hard to get by in a society where your actions affect other people when you ignore even the most basic, generally agreed upon rules of that society, and also it's just easier to get by when you have an expansion pack of moral opinions you developed on your own out of concern for other people. It makes people perceive you as a better person, and it makes you feel better to yourself.
Because if God's not there, there's no heaven or hell. There's no criteria for what's right or what's wrong, and that was the way I lived my life.
Oh, okay, I see. So you're a complete sociopath. Well, forgive me, then, if I stop addressing you politely from here on out, 'cause you sound like kind of an asshole. I mean, you're basically saying unless someone has an infinitely large stick to whack you with when you do bad and offers you an infinitely large carrot if you do good, and unless you think morality is built into the fabric of the universe rather than into the fabric of a society, you don't care to even pretend to follow any standards of morality whatsoever. I mean, really, what's society good for, right? It's only populated by other human beings who've been figuring out ways to get along for hundreds of thousands of years. Humans. Why the fuck would you care about any of those idiots, eh? They're a bunch of non-player characters in the universe that revolves around you. Might as well just do whatever you want, right? I mean, after all, they're not real people with real lives just like yours. And hell, even if they arrest you and toss you in jail so you can't hurt anyone else, that's not infinite punishment, so who cares? You can take it. And I mean, shit, they're not even offering to shower you with infinite rewards if you just don't murder them all. God damn, dude, you're one scary motherfucker if you're capable of thinking like that.
And I'll tell you, brothers, if you grow up as a teenager with no definition of right or wrong, you do whatever you want.
Yeah, to an extent I figure that's true. Some kids get brought up with very little guidance. For example, if they have drug-addicted parents or something, and they turn into serious assholes who are capable of some pretty awful things. I mean, of course, not everyone brought up poorly turns out like that, and not everyone brought up well avoids becoming like that. But if a kid has a family and friends and a culture that promote basic socially healthy behavior, they'll have a better chance than one who doesn't.
You do whatever you want, because who's there to account you? Somebody, my mum or dad, they'd say something to me. Who are you? There's no such thing as right or wrong. How can you tell me that I'm wrong?
Yeah, that's because you were a rebellious little shithead teenager with stupid, poorly thought out opinions. Most of the former teenagers in the audience are unlikely to be reeling with shock right now. But at the same time, I bet that when you got angry at someone at school, you didn't fly into a rage and beat them to a bloody pulp, even if your mess of teenage hormones sometimes made you want to. Or hell, what do I know, maybe you did. I mean, after all, apparently you believe people are inherently totally selfish evil creatures whose upbringing and innate nature does nothing whatsoever to make them care about other people, and whose only hope to appear remotely civil is to be forced into submission through threats of ultra-violence made by a superhuman entity. And even then, the appearance of giving any fucks about anyone at all is just a fake mask worn in a desperate attempt to escape the torture. Such a twisted, intensely misanthropic perspective has got to come from somewhere, I guess. And it kind of gets me curious to see your criminal record.
It's interesting, isn't it, that when I became Muslim, there was an issue with that. Yet when I had that viewpoint on the world prior, there was no issue, there was no problem. They knew I was an atheist before.
Man, don't try to drag atheism into this. I've been an atheist my whole life, and I never thought anything even remotely close to what you've described because I wasn't a goddamn psycho. To be honest, based on what you've told me, it sounds like you were a very mentally disturbed young man, and really, you should have informed your parents so they could seek mental help for you before you hurt anyone. I can only hope you didn't.
And then all of a sudden, I'm out of education, and I'm into the big wide world around me.
Posing an existential threat to yourself and others.
And I stopped and reflected at that point, and I thought, look, is this all there is to life? That I'm just maximizing my time, trying to enjoy myself, but really, inside, you don't feel content when you do that, because imagine traveling without a map. All you'll do is just wander to different places, you'll just check different things out, try different things, but you're never really going anywhere.
To be honest, I don't really think a map is going to help a person in that situation, because if you're just spending your time dicking around checking things out, you don't even seem to have a plan of where you want to go. Using a map kind of requires that first, unless you want to just pick out a random town on the map and go there to check it out, but then you're still just wandering around checking things out. Now man, it sounds like what you needed was a goal, a dream, an idea that grabbed you by the brain wrinkles and refused to let go until you made it a reality. I agree that idly passing the time without really trying to get anywhere does get unsatisfying for a lot of people after a while. It did for me. And while it might seem okay at first, the life that comes from that sort of idleness can get hellishly mundane. The human mind needs something more. And so that's a good reason why, if there's someplace you really want to be in your life, you should draw your own map to get there. Nobody's gonna draw it for you, pal. Nobody's gonna come up with a 5-year plan and the steps you need to take to accomplish a goal. God least of all.
And this was the feeling I had that, okay, yeah, whether it's drinks, drugs, girls, partying, whatever, even university, academically, whatever, you've done that, move on. But you start to run out of things to do, and you start to question it. And when I left university, this is when I questioned it.
Man, do I ever know that feeling. Listen, I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll discuss.
Is that all there is to life now? I go out, I get a job, 9 to 5 it for 50 years, and then I die? Maybe have kids? Is that it? That's all I've got to look forward to? Because if that's all there is, then I'm not that interested, to be honest.
Alright, man. Like I said, I'm right there with you. You have no idea how much I'm with you. I mean, I know your conclusions about how to fix it are going to be completely stupid, but I understand the sentiment perfectly because I've been drowning in those thoughts for years. Not so much the kid one, because I always thought it'd be fun to have a little clone running around to put bad ideas into its head, but certainly the idea of drying up into a bitter old prune by losing 50 years of life to a mind-numbing 9-to-5 grind that I can't escape until someone decides to have mercy on me and let me finally take my fucking pension. Don't do it, man. You know, you're young. If you can, find something to do that really inspires you and use your youth for that instead.
I'm thinking then, okay, I need to be absolutely certain that what I believe is actually true.
What? You mean your belief that there's no God? What does that have to do with not wanting to get stuck in a meaningless 9-to-5 until you die? I mean, isn't the solution to find a way to avoid that cycle and go some other way that suits you better? How does figuring out whether God exists do fuck all to get you out of the 9-to-5 grind for the rest of your life?
So I started to look into different things, different views on life, which, you know, was Christianity. I had another look at Christianity. Had a look at a few other things, Buddhism and things like that.
So just to be crystal clear here, because I'm having a bit of trouble comprehending this, your plan was not to find a way to avoid the soul-crushing 9-to-5 for 50 years and do something that you actually found meaningful. No, it was to assume you were going to get stuck in the meaningless 9-to-5 for 50 years either way, and so instead of trying to do anything at all to change it, you just search around for something to believe that would claim to give meaning to that life, so at least you have something to cling to in your misery that claims to give your life meaning even if nothing actually changes, so that maybe you have a hope of convincing yourself that those 50 years of meaningless, wasted time are meaningful to you, when in fact you know they're not. Is that it?
Some of the brothers in the audience might get jealous when I say this, but when I went to university, the fees were only £1,200 a year. So I paid for it myself. I got a weekend job and I was able to pay for it myself. Alhamdulillah, no debt. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected me even before I became Muslim.
I see. So Allah protected you with the low fees. So he took control of the minds of the university administration and forced them to modify the fee structure for everyone throughout the entire history of that university up to the point when you went there, thus making the costs equally low for everyone who went there when you did too, just so he could protect you specifically from needing a student loan. Wow, that seems somewhat imprecise. I mean, it's almost as if the university just happened to have fees that you could afford at that moment because those fees were sufficient for their budget, and you and everyone else you went to school with just happened to get there at a good time, because someone had to be there at that time. But I guess that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if that's true, the universe doesn't revolve around you, Tim. And we already learned how you feel about the idea of the universe not revolving around you, you selfish little asshole. Hey, by the way, what are the fees now? You said some guys in the audience might get jealous when you say the fees were low back then, so I guess that once Allah was done bending the entire university budget to reduce the fees to protect you, he stopped pushing the fees down and let them inflate massively for everyone in the future, because after all, none of those people are Tim, so they're not even real people. Why the fuck would they need Allah's protection from student debt?
If I had done, I would have taken the Shahada and been thousands of pounds in debt. But that wasn't the case.
Okay, I'm not sure why it's more important to lack student debt after your Shahada than before it, but alright. But do you see why I think you're kind of a solipsistic prick? I mean, apparently, under your belief, Allah decided that absolutely no present or future Muslims going to university now would benefit from lower fees, because the only reason the fees were low was to protect you from debt. But hey, I guess Allah works in mysterious ways, right? One could almost say he works in such mysterious ways that it's a mystery how anyone could think he's working at all.
That weekend job, there were a lot of Muslims who worked in that place. In total, who worked there were about 1,000 people, and 75% easily was Muslim. So a minimum 750 people who worked there were Muslims.
Really? Wow, that's a lot. How do you know? Did the company's HR team keep a record of people's religious affiliations and report those statistics to the employees? Or was it more like there were just a lot of brown people and so you assumed? Because somehow I doubt that you even spoke to all 1,000 people, let alone got to the point of asking them about their religion.
During my time there, I'd made a lot of friends, and, we'd had discussions and debates, and like I say, I thought I was so smart.
Yeah, can you believe you ever thought that way? Good thing you saw the light and now you know you're dumb.
And there were brothers there who used to come to work reeking of utter.
Ugh, gross. God damn, bro. If you gotta wear perfume, at least keep it minimal. Other people are trying to work here, you disrespectful asshole.
I didn't even know what utter was at the time. I used to think that guy's wearing perfume. What the?
Yeah, that's because they were wearing perfume. Just because they wear it because Muhammad liked it doesn't mean they aren't still just wearing perfume and stinking up the place for everyone else.
And there were people who came, they'd come fully dressed in the thobe, they had big beards.
Oh, okay, so maybe that's how you knew they were Muslim. Except, well, I still don't quite believe that 750 out of 1,000 employees there were dudes in dresses with big beards. Excuse my skepticism.
In that whole time I was there, guess how many people actually spoke to me about Islam?
Spoke to you about Islam, or just mentioned that they followed it? Because if it's the former, I have no idea, but if it's the latter, I'd guess at least several hundred, since you seem to know the religion of everyone there.
One.
One? Wow. Really? Wow. One. Wait, how am I supposed to feel about this? Tell me how I'm supposed to feel about this.
Of 750 minimum, one spoke to me about Islam.
Okay, so I'm supposed to think it's a bad thing? I guess? But not because your work colleague was trying to convert you in the workplace, but because the rest of them didn't. I guess that's it? Never mind, go on, clarify for me.
And all that happened was, he saw me one day whilst I was going through this process of reflecting on things. He saw me in a bit of a state, and he said, are you okay? You look a bit down. And I just said to him, just casually, I just said, look, I've been thinking recently, is there more to life than what I used to believe?
And he said, oh, what do you mean? And you said, well, is my only option really to spend my whole life in a mundane job until I retire, or is there some other way I could go? And he said, hey, listen, kid, you're young. You don't need to do the usual thing just because it's what everyone thinks you're supposed to do, alright? At your age, you can afford to try new things and see what fits. Yeah, it's a riskier option, but it also offers potentially a much more rewarding experience. You're just gonna have to decide whether that risk is worth it to you to avoid the dull, soul-crushing safety of 50 years in a career that doesn't really work for you. But yeah, if you want it, there is more to life. I assume that's kind of how the conversation went, right?
And his eyes lit up when I said this. And he said, you mean, does God exist?
Oh, right. Never mind. Silly me. He was a religious dude. I don't know why I thought he'd interpret a question about life as actually being about life. I find this attitude kind of incredible. Have you ever thought about this? Would anyone think this conversation makes any goddamn sense? Hello, barista. Wasn't there supposed to be something else in this coffee?
Oh, do you mean, does God exist?
No. I mean, on the menu it said there was whipped cream. You know what I'm saying? Actually, some people watching probably think that conversation makes perfect fucking sense. Humans confuse me sometimes, man. I feel like a space alien sometimes. But then I remember that I actually am.
Praise the Overlord.
And I didn't mean, does God exist? But he said, do you mean... And I thought, I said to him, well, not really, but I'm willing to discuss it.
Wait. Why? Listen to how this sounds, right? You're sitting there, you're a hard atheist, you're convinced God doesn't exist, and you're struggling with a crisis of uncertainty, not about God or any of that bullshit, but about how you're gonna make money in the future. Real life concerns. And this random jackoff comes up and mentions something totally irrelevant to your concerns and which you're convinced is a silly waste of time, and instead of saying, "No man, it's more like about my career and stuff, I really feel like I'm not super interested in going the direction I'm going, but I feel like I kind of have to." No, instead of that, you say, "Sure, okay, let's just discuss some random delusional bullshit." I mean, what, were you just bored of feeling depressed and you felt like distracting yourself with a bit of religious debate? Or what?
And he said, okay. He said, let's sit down. So we sat down in one of the little break rooms, and he said to me, he said, look, and I'll never forget this, he said, look, if we start discussing this, before we do that, I need you to buy in on something.
Oh, that's actually a smart plan, yeah. Lay down some ground rules, because after all, when it comes to religion, people tend to get pretty emotional sometimes, so you wouldn't want to get in a shouting match in the office or anything like that, right? Make sure to agree on boundaries from the start so it stays civil, yeah. Smart fella, I like this guy.
And he said, if I prove to you that God exists, what does that mean?
Oh, never mind. I see where this is going, and it's not to somewhere smart like agreeing on debate rules.
I thought, this guy's never going to prove that God exists.
And now you're a Muslim, so I guess he must have managed it. And you were such a convinced atheist, too. A completely retarded one from what you've said so far, but so damn convinced. I'm on the edge of my seat, man. What did he say?
He said, if I prove, what does it mean? I said...
Oh, wait, let me guess. You said, well, since you're a Muslim and you're trying to prove that capital G God exists, not just any God, I suppose that would mean that a being exists matching every aspect of how you as a Muslim would describe it. So it would have to be omniscient and omnipotent, but probably not omnipresent, since Allah is not supposed to exist within its creation. And speaking of creation, it created the universe, and you'd probably say it created heaven and hell and angels and jinn, so all those things must also exist. Of course, to demonstrate that, you're going to have to first separately demonstrate the existence of all of those things, because you can't demonstrate that a God exists who created hell and heaven and all that if you didn't first establish that hell and heaven were even created, let alone exist. Am I in the right ballpark, or...?
Okay, if you can prove it, that means I have a creator. That means right and wrong exist. Heaven and hell exist.
Oh, okay, so I was kind of close to the right ballpark, so yeah. I agree about the creator and heaven and hell parts, because this guy isn't saying he's just going to prove some random god, but the God of Islam, which means he necessarily has to prove there's a God that created the universe and heaven and hell. Those are characteristics of the Islamic God. And by doing that, he's actually made his task more difficult, because really, he should have just started by trying to prove that either there's any God at all, or that the universe was created by something which may or may not be a God. And from there, he could have built up his case for the Islamic God on that foundation. But hey, instead he decided to dive in with both feet, you know? You gotta respect that, the guy's confident. Good on him. Oh, and obviously, as for the existence of God, meaning that right and wrong exist, that's just stupid, but we already talked about why, so I'm not going to go over it again.
Heaven and hell exist. That means I'm accountable for my actions and that I have a purpose.
Uh-huh. You realize that what you just said was just as stupid as saying right and wrong don't exist if God doesn't exist, for the same reasons? Look, no matter what you believe or don't believe, you are accountable for your actions. Not to a God, but to the people around you and to yourself. If you're going around raping and murdering, the people around you are going to come looking for you, and if they catch you, they're going to throw you in jail or worse. If you're just kind of a nasty person to be around, people are going to stop wanting to be around you, and you can be nasty all by your lonesome. And if you do something really, really awful, most likely you'll feel bad about it afterwards. By which I don't mean you will feel bad about it afterwards, since you were talking like a sociopathic freak earlier, but you get the idea. And sure, we humans don't always manage to hold everyone to account. That's just what it means to not be omniscient or perfect. Sometimes murderers and evil dictators and all kinds of bad people get off scot-free. But I would bet that you'll still think twice before you go on a killing spree. You understand the consequences. And when the police come knocking, they're not going to send you to heaven instead of jail just because you say you're sorry.
That means I'm accountable for my actions and that I have a purpose.
Oh, right, I forgot the purpose bit. Yeah, that's somehow even dumber than the accountability part. You know, at least I can understand what you're getting at with the accountability thing somewhat. You want people to feel like every wrong move they make in life is being observed by Big Brother, and they could be tortured in the most monstrous, criminal, disproportionate way possible for it. You figure there's some kind of social value to making people feel constantly under threat of an eternity of what that Jordanian pilot went through when the Islamic State burned him in that cage, you disgusting fuck. You figure that could make people commit fewer crimes, I guess. Or at the very least, you figure, hey, at least the bad guys can't get away with anything without getting tortured at the end. The idea of people getting tortured forever really makes me feel a lot better about the order of things. But then to turn around and say that the existence of heaven and hell would give you purpose? What the fuck? So you're sitting there in the break room feeling confused, not really sure of your purpose in life because you're young and you haven't made a purpose for yourself yet. And you're a hard atheist. And at the first mention of God, suddenly you decided it'd make perfect sense for someone else to hand you an information package and say, I declare this is your purpose. Metaphorically, your life is a maze and you're a mouse. There are only 2 exits from this maze. One exit leads to a chamber where you'll be slow roasted to a crispy black. The other exit leads to a chamber with infinite bricks of cheese. You must feel fulfilled by this purpose. If you don't feel fulfilled by this purpose, and you don't thank the great experimenter for it every 5th step through the maze, you'll be picked out of the maze and put in the roasting chamber. Now, don't you feel fucking important? I mean, really, dude, are you kidding me? No! Nobody makes your purpose for you except you, and nor should you want them to. Your purpose in life is no one's decision but yours. For example, my purpose in life is to make people stop believing what you believe because it makes people think like you do, which genuinely bothers me. And no, it doesn't just bother me because someone told me I'd burn if I didn't feel bothered. I have actual feelings of my own. And by the way, if you choose to make your purpose in life to follow the teachings of Islam, that still wasn't God's choice. That was yours. Muslims believe in free will, right? With or without Islam, humans decide their own purpose.
And he said, okay. He said, if you prove to me that God doesn't exist, I'll stop being a Muslim. I thought, all right, okay. Great.
Oh, great. So now, right off the bat, he's trying to frame the discussion differently than it started. He's trying to prove God exists, and you're trying to prove he doesn't. I gotta say, that's a pretty clever maneuver. Seeing as really, it should just be him trying to prove God exists, since that seems like what he wants to do, and then you questioning the points he makes in support of his claim. Why is he suddenly telling you that you're supposed to be on the offensive trying to deconvert him, when he's the one who started out wanting to convert you? And of course you don't even notice, you just let it slide. Get your head in the game, man.
So he said, we won't discuss in work. He said, we'll meet outside of work and we'll chat about it there.
Well, hey, would you listen to that? He said something that kind of actually makes sense. The workplace really is not the best place for that sort of thing. If you're going to get into a shouting match, you might as well go do it at the pub. Sorry, right, he's a Muslim. The malt shop?
So we did that Friday, we met up, we exchanged numbers, met up outside of work, this little restaurant, and he brought 2 other brothers along.
Seriously? That seems a little strange, don't you think? I mean, up until now, it seemed like this was supposed to be a one-on-one discussion between you two, but now it seems like he wanted to make sure you were outnumbered. What's up with that? But hey, listen, man, I know this is just starting to get interesting, and I'm really, really sorry, but I have to go check on baby Elzebub. Her uncle Lucifer's taking care of her, and I just really have to make sure she doesn't hurt him too badly. So, I'm gonna blue ball my audience right here before you actually start in with the arguments, and we'll continue this in a part 2 in a few days, okay? Whoa, dude, hey, no need to get rude, man. I know I haven't been good at making part 2s in the past, but this time I actually have the time, alright? Don't worry, I'll get it done. Alright, we'll continue this real soon, I promise. Oh, and by the way, audience, if you like my content, any Patreon donations are very much appreciated. They really help pay the bills, and sometimes it's nice to have the bills paid. And if you want to see more of my videos, make sure you subscribe and thumb it up, and I'll see you in the next video.